What is going on, Movie Meals? Movie Meals. I don't know what's going on with my headphones, but it's freaking me out. It's doing some spatial awareness stuff. Uh,
Just another day.
we're here to talk about Dune. Before we get into anything, Movie Meal patrons, Kimberly, Karen, guys, help us get to that 2,000 mark. We're gonna give a free hoodie away for those who comment, like, subscribe, and share, do all the good stuff. We're gonna give one away to a fan who leaves some comments and does some great things. Yeah, I think that was my issue. It was. Okay.
There you go.
So we're this will be our podcast for this week, whatever episode it is, 40 something. Sorry about the last one being late. We filmed it and then I just didn't get a chance to edit it or put it up right away. And then when I had a lot of stuff was happening. I got really sick. I've been sick so long, forever. I'm still sick. Never gonna be healed. So it just kind of took a while to get that episode kind of up and going, but we're just going to talk about Dune today. We didn't really feel we had much else to chat about. Next week we'll do our Oscar final predictions. Always pumped for the Oscars. So yeah, we're going to make this a full spoiler, longer, we'll just kind of see when the conversation ends, review of Dune Part 2 here. So all spoilers from this point on will be there. So if you haven't seen the movie, put this in your watch later and come back. Go see the movie. All right. So here we go. Kyle, Dune, you loved it, huh? I heard you're a big fan. Okay?
I am enjoying these movies so far, but I think since I have the reading level of a first grader, I can't say that I completely love Dune, the book series, that's for sure.
Yeah, I read the first Dune very quickly after the first movie came out. I read Dune. I have a short attention span, so there was a lot I had forgotten. There were some beats in the book that I remembered, some I didn't. Getting out, talking to people about it afterwards, it's like, and then I was watching stuff about it, about the differences with the books. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that happened in the book, and this happened in the book. I mean, I just finished a book series the other day, and I'm already forgetting half the stuff that went on. So I've been talking about it, but I
hate
just
that.
have a short attention span, man.
That's gonna be
Yeah,
me
the
with
movie.
characters, that's for sure. Like characters in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went into the movie. I bet you went in a similar mindset. Like I went in, I always try my best to leave my bias at the door. Walk into that theater, you walk in fresh. You have no idea what's coming. It was hard a little bit not to. The reviews were insane. All I was hearing was it is Empire Strikes Back. It is, Lord of the Rings here. It's The Dark Knight. It's one of the greatest sequels ever made in the history of movies. It's
One
like
of the best movies in 10 years.
I know everybody's saying it's some of the best movies I've ever seen. And yeah. I kept hearing that from critics and from pundits and just random fans, friends who were like, a friend of ours had already seen it too. He went on Thursday night and saw it and was like, I didn't want to believe the hype, but oh my gosh, it's so good. About halfway through the movie, I was like, is this as good as I'm thinking it is? Because I'm loving everything I'm seeing. Yeah. And it just kept going and going. And I was like, this movie is it. It is. It is a movie that 10 years from now, I think you're going to sit back and people are going to talk about, oh yeah, Dune, that was one of my best theater going experiences. I got to see it in the 70 millimeter IMAX we have here, which was amazing. I know Kyle went to an IMAX as well.
Yeah.
You want to see this on the biggest screen possible. I walked out and I was kind of like I was in a zen. I was kind of just walking out and I don't know. I just felt like
you're trying to remember that we're in the real world.
Yeah, it was so freaking good. I loved it. This movie is amazing. I think it stands on its own, but yes, it is part of this bigger story of part 1 of Dune. I think they go together so well. We rewatched the first one to prep for it, and I love the first one. I think the first one's a great, amazing movie, and this one is even better. It's a lot of the action you get from the second part of the book. I think in terms of adapting the book, they did a fantastic job. The big things that I think people have been talking about that they took out of the book, I think make complete sense, that you should take those out for the story you're trying to tell. It gets a little too much. It'll be really interesting since Denis is talking about doing Dune Messiah so much, where the story's going to go and how reception will be, because the book is not loved by so many people. The Dune Messiah book is not loved as much. But
Okay.
anyway, let's focus on the movie here. So, Kyle, you put some control to me right now. Give me a thought from the movie. What was something you loved so much about it? First thing.
Well, I just want to. I can't remember what movie it was recently. I think it was for Napoleon. Funny enough, where I was saying like there's just moments in this movie where on like a filmmaking scale, I think of like one person helming something as massive as some of the sets of that movie were, and we're just blown away by like how does one person be able to like handle such a feat like that? And I honestly did get that same kind of reaction during a lot of times with Dune Part 2 for Denis Villeneuve and how he handled this movie. It just blows my mind that such creative people, one creative person can helm like a bunch of creative people and come together and make something as amazing to witness as Dune Part 2 was. And as much as this is a channel where like we try to be pretty balanced when it comes to, showing like our critical thoughts of the movie, but also being able to praise the movie at the same time. But it's really hard when a movie just makes you feel so overwhelmingly happy of like what you experience that it's hard to like come up with negatives in this moment, especially like a day later even. So yeah, but that it just for me it left a really great experience of like being blown away by like how people are able to come together and just make something as creative and cinematic and epic as this movie does. But
for less than $200 million too. Take a look at that, Marvel.
No, that's impressive on top of it too. But yeah, I can't imagine, being able to just take like how dense these books seemingly are and just being able to find the right creative liberties to make changes to them to where it is able to tell a very good story on the big screen. And at times, like, you can feel like its massiveness in the runtime. As much as I enjoyed it, there definitely was moments of like pacing, but that's kind of going to happen with a 3-hour movie anyway, I feel. But even still, you were able to instantly get hooked back into the movie, whether it's like an epic battle scene or whether it's even like a small character moment between two supporting characters, for example. So
I know, and all the performances are fantastic. I mean, the narrative around the movie has been that Florence Pugh, Zendaya, Timothy Chalamet, and Austin Butler are really like the next wave of movie stars. That's really what they have become.
yeah,
I know I was talking to a friend last night about Dune, and he was saying that he goes, I don't know if Dune will, like, I know it's making a lot of money in this opening weekend or tracking to, but he said that he doesn't think it'll actually have a lot of staying power because he thinks it's an alienated audience. And I just completely disagree. I think Timothy Chalamet alone draws in people that you wouldn't expect. I think Zendaya draws in people you wouldn't expect. I think Austin Butler and Florence have now both gotten to the point where they have their own fan base that will draw people to a movie. And it's nice to kind of see a little bit of movie stardom come back. But
yeah,
here's the biggest takeaway I felt, because I know I left and everyone was talking about Austin Butler and Austin Butler's performance. Is it compared to Heath Ledger and the Joker and everything? And he is fantastic. And I also just keep hearing everybody say, thank goodness they moved from the October date. Could you imagine this Oscars right now with Dune Part 2 and Oppenheimer and Barbie and all these other incredible movies that were supposed to duke it out? Because I just don't know how this movie doesn't get nominated. The first one got nominated for like 10, 11, 12 awards. How does this one not? Because I think it's better, the second half. But anyway, I think here's the biggest thing. The biggest star of the movie to me is Denis Villeneuve. I think when you look at a movie like The Dark Knight, when you watch the movie, you don't leave thinking about Christopher Nolan as the star. It's Heath. Everything else in the movie is good, and Heath is phenomenal. He's above everybody else. He's above everything going on in that movie, is what I think. I think when you get out of Dune Part 2, you sit there and you go, wow, Austin Butler was amazing. And then you go, oh my gosh, you see this, like Timothée Chalamet showed me range I've never seen with some of this performance. Florence Pugh did an amazing job with a small role. Zendaya was phenomenal. You just continue to think that, and you go, oh, look at these shots, everything. That's when you know that the director was the star of the movie. That's what cinema's supposed to be at its core anyway, is the director getting the best performances out of their actors, creating incredible visuals. We have a great script. Everything is coming together and falling into place. And that's when you know, like Lord of the Rings, the star's Peter Jackson. Like when you look back at Empire Strikes Back, I know George didn't direct it, but you look back at the Star Wars movies and you think George Lucas is the star of these movies. Like he is what made this movie such a pop culture phenomenon. And I've been preaching it since Prisoners in 2013. Denis Villeneuve is one of the best directors working today. Everybody is now talking about, is it time to put him in the conversation? I've been putting him in the conversation for over a decade. Are you kidding me?
Time. Yeah,
I've been championing this man since the moment I walked out of Prisoners because I knew that movie was insane. This movie is Denis Villeneuve, and it's not taking away from everybody else who are incredible, excellent. I mean, they are the best of the best doing incredible work. I mean, Javier Bardem is an Academy Award-winning actor. He's one of the best in generations, and he is awesome in the movie. Everybody's
he was so
awesome.
Funny. He did great.
Oh my gosh. The first half of the movie is so funny, and then all of a sudden that second half, you're like, what the heck just happened? That speech by Timothée Chalamet, I know. Go ahead. You go ahead.
I just wanted to add on, like, with how funny he was, it's a really good sign that the most general of audiences, and, you know, not to sound rude or anything, but you can kind of tell when there's like general audiences around you, especially for, you know, people like Alex and I who go to a movie like every week practically. But you can, like, if they're able to laugh at like some of the kind of under the radar humor that's going on the first half of the movie, like if it's like belly aching laugh at that moment, you know that you have something good on your hands. I don't know if that means like repeat viewings, but at least it's a good sign to where that general audience person is going to come to their buddy who is also the same and is going to be like, no, you should check out Dune. It's actually pretty good. It's a good sign to me.
No, it's really good. I know, like, my brother was talking in our chat last night that this movie has saved cinema. I don't know. I mean, I think it depends on where you're at in terms of
it's just the meme of
dead.
This is cinema. You know what I mean? It's just like the meme thing.
Yeah.
Of it all.
It's just, I mean, it depends. If you're talking from COVID, that was Top Gun. Top Gun absolutely is what saved movie theaters and cinema. It's not even, I mean, you go ask anyone in Hollywood. Directors are walking up to Tom Cruise thanking him for Top Gun. But anyway, if you've been on this channel for long enough, you know I have actually not been the biggest fan of Timothée Chalamet because when Call Me By Your Name came out and Lady Bird, and then it continued to follow. Eventually, then we move on to Little Women and obviously Wonka this last year and stuff. He got so much praise right away for this insane range, this insane talent, and he was being compared to DiCaprio. This is the new DiCaprio, is what people used to say pretty much right off the gate with his earlier movies. To me, I didn't see that range. So I just have not been the biggest fan. I thought it was overhyping him because he really, and I will argue to any day. You go watch Beautiful Boy, which is, they're all good movies. Beautiful Boy, Call Me By Your Name, and even Lady Bird. Was pretty good. They're very similar. Bones and All, a couple years ago. I think that was last year, wasn't it? In 2013?
Year or two ago, something like that.
Or 2023. He to me, he has always played a very similar type of whiny / boyfriend / douche character. He kind of was always wrapped in that same style, and it, like, sometimes I like his performances were always very similar, and I really appreciated Wonka because Wonka was very different for him. He was so upbeat, and he had to show a side of him you don't see very often. In Bones and All, in Call Me By Your Name, in Lady Bird, in Don't Look Up, in Little Women, Little Women is probably the only real exception. He's very the pessimist side boy character to someone else's lead. And the first Dune had turned it around for me completely. And I was like, this is the range I've wanted to see. Rewatching Dune, I thought that again. I was like, this is the range I've wanted to see from him. This is him showing not just this kind of quirky, douchey kind of side, dramatic side, but he's thrown in some humor. He's thrown in some courage. He's thrown in some power. Then you get to Dune Part 2, and he does all that and ups it. In the beginning, he's funny. Mm-hmm. He shows us his humor and his strength and his timing in his humor in the beginning of the movie. As it slowly changes, you are so grappled by his performance. You follow him along and you start to understand why he has his hesitancy, why he then ultimately does what he does and drinks the water and does all these things, and then why he becomes who he does. And it is so freaking good. I think now we can fairly say that he is in that DiCaprio aspect. I think now he has earned it. I think people, whether you saw it in him the first time, good for you. I'm glad you were the first one on board, but he never showed that range to me. And I will argue that to the end of my days. He never showed this level of range and style. I think if you go back, if you watch Dune Part 2 and go back to one of his earlier movies, even Beautiful Boy, any of those early movies, and you look at those performances, you go, wow, he's very good in this movie, but man, he's really showing us something now. And like, he's here to stay. I think Florence Pugh does the same thing. Austin Butler, I think, showed it in Elvis that he can really sink into a role and show a big amount of range. And then in this movie, he just shows his complete psychopath. He's so good as Frey Rafa. I loved him.
I think for myself,
and Zendaya too.
I think for myself, if you don't mind me joining in, I was really on board with the hype, starting with Beautiful Boy. I think that's where I really saw the range come out of him, and I saw that character feeling different compared to like his Call Me by Your Name character personally. But with Dune Part 2, I feel like I am fully on board with like the he is him train. Like, he can do any role that he wants to, and I will be on board with it completely. And I do feel like this is the movie that he really did have to like take control of, because I'm sure that there was some audiences that maybe didn't buy that like there's like this darker side underneath like this scrawny white kid, you know what I mean? And I feel like in this movie, I felt it with like his like vocal performance, but also just with his presence, not in terms of like bulking up muscle, but just in like his ability to take control of like a room and take control of an army that you see like towards the tail end of the movie, where I'm like, oh, this is when everyone's going to understand how good this guy is. So yeah, I mean, there was plenty of people that probably saw something special in him from, 5 years ago now, but I think the majority of audiences will be like, oh, I get it now. Yeah, he is really, really good. And rightfully so. This is a great role from him.
I mean, just the fact that to me, when you can show range all the way from humor, optimism, all those qualities to the darker thing, because I think sometimes we go, wow, that actor has great range, and they screamed for 5 minutes in the movie, but they didn't really show anything else. And he really shows it. He shows it in his facial expressions throughout the whole movie. He's able to really show what he can do. He is so good. His relationship to Zendaya is so good. His relationship with Austin Butler is
very well off of him.
So good. She was so good. This is probably my favorite Zendaya performance too. I think she really showed what she can do. I know she's good in Euphoria. She's obviously great in Spider-Man, and she's been around for a while. And I liked her in that Malcolm and Marie movie. I thought her performance was good, even if the movie wasn't that great. But here in Dune, I think she's really able to show what she's got. Florence,
she won 2 Emmys in a row for Euphoria as well. Like, Euphoria is just not a show for me, but
she's good in it. But
right.
Again, that's a show that's designed to show that it's always easier to be dramatic than it is to make people laugh. Funny. It's harder to make people laugh. It's much harder to make people laugh. Comedies are way harder than dramas. It's easier, when Ted Lasso wins a bunch of Emmys, I get that. It's harder to make that show than it is a high school show about drugs. Not saying not trying to take away anything from Euphoria or her wins, but I'm just saying in general, this movie, she shows such insane range as well, and shows us how strong of an actor she really is, especially by the end. I mean, when we get into that scene and he yells silence to the Reverend Mother, and then even when Zendaya just storms out of the room and leaves, it is so powerful. It's so impactful. And like you were saying, Paul is meant to be, I think he's like 15 in the book, something like that. Is he 15 in the book, Autumn? He's a little old, like 15, 16 in the book. He's like a teenager, mid to late teenager. Might be a little
He's
older in the book,
he's
but
35.
16. But Timothy, his build really does do that. Like when you see Austin Butler on screen, you're like, I'm not afraid of, or you're like, I don't want to see Austin Butler. You see Timothy Chalamet at the beginning of the movie, and you're like, all right, I can take him. Like, come on, this is Timothy Chalamet. I got him.
I'm sure there was a lot of audiences like that heading in.
But that's how you know this performance was as good as it was, because as soon as he gets to that scene where he looks at the guy and he kneels down, he goes, no, it's fear. It's fear. You're like, oh, yeah, you're right. I'm getting down.
Sorry, sir.
My bad, Jesus. My bad. I did not mean to challenge you. But that shows the because I think that is an audience member. At no point was I like, nah, like it feels fake. I could still take, you try to do that tough guy, it doesn't work. And then, and can we talk about the fight scene? Oh my gosh, the fighting in this was phenomenal. Yeah. Especially that last fight with Fred Rafa and Paul. Those two, that sword battle, that dagger fighting was some of the best choreographed fighting I have seen in a long time. Like I was like, this is Raid level. This is this good.
I like that it felt like you yourself were feeling the hits. Like it like with the way that they were swinging their swords and moving around, like there was like, that sensibility to where it's almost like a dance in a sense, kind of. It has a good flow
all the
to
actors
it.
Always say it's a dance when they rehearse but
right. But I like that there was the extra touch of it not feeling only like that, even though it does look really nice to the eye. But you can just hear the hits with like sound effects, obviously. But even still, like the hits, the way that they're like snarling at each other, like there's just such a oomph to it, like a much needed oomph, especially for everything leading up to that fight. And Austin Butler, that was also a performance where I'm like, oh, he's also him. Like we finally are seeing a new wave of movie stars, and I really hope Hollywood just takes notice of that and doesn't shy away from like making stuff for like the Hollywood actor to drive audiences to see their movies. I don't know. I just think that it doesn't hurt to go back to that, because at least it's interesting movies, I think. So it's nice to see that coming out.
Yeah, when Timothy Chalamet has a bigger fan base now overall and becomes more of a movie star, then when you get a Bones and all that comes out, more people might go see it now because of him. And I think that is a good thing too. Real quick side note, give me one or two actors that you think are around that same age range of those four that you would throw in there. Like I would add Haley Steinfeld, and I think I would add Tom Holland. I think are there. I think these four might now be elevated above them, but I think they're kind of in that wave with them. Is there anybody else you'd toss in?
Geez, off the top of my head, I hope Anya Taylor-Joy can become that, which, speaking of which, pleasant surprise.
Oh yeah, that's the spoiler I got. Remember I told you there was one spoiler I think I got? I saw her on the red carpet or whatever, and people were like, but I didn't know who she was playing. So that, and I didn't want to I didn't even consciously think to guess from the books who she was playing. So when she showed up, I had completely forgotten about it, and it ended up being a good surprise. But I think Anya Taylor-Joy, I agree. The girl from The Bear, I think, has got a lot of potential. Can't remember her name.
Ao? Oh, yeah.
Ao, yeah. I think she has a lot of potential. Jeremy Allen White, I think, could be in there. He's a little older, but yeah, that's just a little side combo. We can get back to Dune.
But anyway, in terms of Austin Butler's character too, I appreciated him as well as his relationship between his uncle, played by Stellan Skarsgård, and Dave Bautista's character as well. Who, by the way, Bautista, dude, that guy just keeps on showing how good of an actor he is.
That's crazy, because the narrative I have seen on Twitter and that I continue to hear since getting out of the movie, and even a little before the movie, was that Dave Bautista was wasted in this movie and that he's one of the biggest negatives. That all he did was yell and scream the whole movie. He did yell a lot in this movie, but I am more with you. I think he makes sense for the character. I think when you combine it with part one and you look at this as one big whole story, it makes complete sense why the little he's in the movie, he is so stressed and he is so upset. I think people got in, and the characters had to remind us that oh yeah, we just had a massive battle and there was a big rebellion and all this stuff happened, and now we're fighting and things like that. So yeah, I think Batista's great, and I think he is showing his performances and how good he is.
Oh yeah.
I think he's phenomenal. And Rebecca Ferguson, oh my gosh, is she
See,
great?
now I feel like she was a little underutilized. I mean, when she comes up for her big moments,
Oh,
they have weight, but I just love, maybe I just like her so much that I want more of her, kind of like with everyone in Dave Bautista, but I don't know, she kind of disappeared in the movie after a while, and I was like, I kind of want more of her so I can get a gauge on like what's exactly going on with her and her unborn daughter. It's just too
well,
much mystery. I want to know.
see, for the book fans, you want me to spoil the book for you?
Sure, I'll
Tell
probably
you
forget.
change?
I'll probably forget when
Spoilers
the
for
movie
the
comes out
movie and
anyway.
book. We're already talking about that, but no. This is something that didn't happen in the movie that people thought in the book, because Dune. These two movies were the first book, right? They're together for one
Mm-hmm.
book. In the Dune book, there's a 2-year time jump when she goes to the south, I believe. Right? When she goes south, there's the 2-year time jump. Yeah, when they all go south, they jump 2 years, and
Mm-hmm.
she gives birth, and the baby comes out as like a full-fledged adult, like as her brain is completely fully, like she's a body of a kid, but like as a, like literally right out the womb she can talk and
Right.
have full conversations. And I
Because
love that
that's
the
from
way
the
the
water, right? The
movie,
water.
I don't remember. I don't
I
know if
just
that's from the
assume.
water or just her Benny Jesuit powers. Probably a little combination of both, right? The water.
Mm.
Yeah, probably the water. Yeah, you got the all yes from the fact checker over here. But
Okay,
we
works for me.
but that, to me, it makes so much sense. I think we got just enough of that, and I think cutting that storyline from the book, because in the book, Kyle, the daughter, his sister is who kills Skarsgård's character, the Vladimir Harkonnen, the kind of lead
Okay.
boss. She does it. She like poisons him, and
Hmm.
in this, he did it. And I think that was a change that made sense. I think Denis was really smart and knew that this story, thematically and on the screen, needs to be
Is
about
Paul's.
Paul, and
Yeah.
it needs to stay Paul. They didn't do a 2-year time jump. I bet they will for Messiah, and I think Messiah has a time jump in it too, doesn't it?
Would
Yeah, I
make
think
sense.
Messiah also jumps forward in time. Yeah, Messiah is gonna be insane when it comes out because it's gonna divide people so much.
It's probably more grim than even like the first two movies are, right? That's kind of what I'm getting.
I don't know how to explain it to you without telling you.
That's fine. You can leave that out then. That's also
Well, I'll tell
something.
you this.
Yeah, you go.
Because maybe you'll remember the comment, because I know you're about to rewatch it with Augusta. But Autumn was telling me that a lot of people, and the way she looks at Paul's character, is very similar to how Eren Yeager's character in Attack on Titan. They kind of go through a similar change at the end of the story, and it turns people off. Didn't turn me off in Attack on Titan. I think it's brilliant. If you ask Annie Essays over there, he thinks Dune Messiah is brilliant, and he thinks the book does a phenomenal job, but it turns a lot of people off. So it'll be just interesting to see. I know he's done after that. The fourth book is like a giant space worm, I was told, talking the whole time, 1,000 years in the future. So I don't think they'll be doing more than 3 movies. That'll be a tough sell, especially when Denis, because I know Denis was like, I'm going to do Messiah, I think, and then I'm done. If they want to keep going, they can. And it's like, well, yeah, these books get crazy.
Where he's like, I don't know if I can pull that off.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't mind, our previous conversation just reminded me of how impressive this movie does in making you want to root for Paul and follow Paul's arc, but at the same time, you know that there's a bleakness to that character. So despite you being like, hooray, the Sand Army defeated the other army, but at the same time you're like, but that also probably means bad things are about to happen anyway. So it's a nice touch, and it's nice to see a movie decide to take that risk instead of changing the story completely. To, I guess, stay true to it in a sense, but also to give audiences something a bit different too. Something a bit with
No,
a
I
edge for cinemas.
I
Yeah.
think you put both these movies up with some of the best adaptations ever. I think like this is along the lines of Harry Potter. They made the right decisions where they belong to make a very great, compelling story. I mean, the score in this movie, obviously the shots are phenomenal. I mean, oh my God, this movie looks so beautiful. Maybe that's why the budget
Yeah.
was so much lower than like anything anybody else does these days, because they just went to the desert and they were like, do a wide shot.
Yeah.
But
But at least it looks good.
it
You
is
know?
crazy though. People have compared the budget for both part 1 and part 2 combined is just barely over the budget of the Marvels and Quantumania individually. That's
I
insane. That's
yeah.
insane. This is an important movie. I mean, like really, this is an important movie. When we say cinema has been saved, I think that's why I bring up the question of what are we being saved from? If you're talking about the kind of the COVID issues, I think that goes Top Gun. But if you're looking at what big budget, massive storytelling can be, I think
Mhm.
this is the best we've had in a while since maybe. I mean, I hadn't had this great of a time in the theater probably since seeing Avengers Endgame,
Wow.
Force
Yeah.
Awakens.
I mean, off the top of my head in like the 2020s, I think about the Batman or Nope or Top Gun Maverick kind of. Like it's probably not a high of a budget compared to this, but it still felt like a big epic story to me, funny enough, even though it's just, about
It
fighter
is.
pilots, but
I'm
it
thinking
had that
more
touch
though
for
of
me.
along the lines of movies that it's like I think Endgame was like everybody went. Where were you when Endgame hit? I think when you look back at like the big moments in cinema, starting with
Mhm.
Jaws and this kind of um, change of blockbusters from Star Wars to Jaws to Jurassic Park, and you keep that needle moving, I think then you get up to Lord of the Rings. I think you can toss Dark Knight in there, and then I would
Yeah,
add,
yeah.
and then I think Top Gun probably should be the next one in that sequence, along with the last two Avengers, probably the first Avengers, and then I would guess Endgame. I
I mean,
probably would put those, and then this.
last year we also had Barbie and Oppenheimer. I mean, I was telling our buddies on our
That
way
is true.
over
Barbenheimer
to
was something
see the
special.
movie. Yeah, I was saying like it's nice to be able to have these events still for seeing a movie to where we're going to look
Yeah.
back and be like, where were you? Like, were you part of the Barbenheimer experience? Were you watching Doom Part 2 when
Yeah.
it first came out?
Well,
Yeah,
I was talking to a friend of
I'm
ours
grateful
last
for that.
night who has said he's like, I just doubt we'll go see Dune in the theater because we've had bad experiences. And I was like, I'm going to tell you right now. I know you had a couple bad experiences in the theater the last couple times you went, but if you miss out seeing Dune in the biggest screen possible, I think you'll regret it. You might sit on your TV and watch it when it comes on VOD and you'll be like, I'm fine. It's okay because you're a little cynic. But overall, I think at the end of the day, truly, you should go on the biggest screen you can possibly find to see Dune. I think it is
Even
literally, I think it's as good as any of those sequels we're talking about. I think it is arguably one of the greatest sequels ever made for a movie. And
wow.
realistically, it's just part 2 to one massive story.
Mhm.
So, other thoughts on Dune?
Um, like we said, a lot of the not just hand to hand combat action sequences are great,
Oh,
but also just like
so
the
good.
battles that took place. There was one battle, quote unquote, in particular, excuse me, that I really liked where they hid in the sand as soon as like that sand
Oh,
machine is going through to pick up the spice, and just the way
every
that
time
the
they hide
shot
in the sand.
happens. Yeah, anytime that the shot
It's
happens where they're like following them, trying to like put bombs on to blow up, but they're also like scuttling underneath the machine as like the tires are getting closer to them, so they have to keep crawling. But there's like shots happening around them from like the helicopters or whatever. Uh, yeah, just the way that it felt claustrophobic but yet epic, and the movements that they had when it comes to like how they fight, cause they have to live on sand. Like their fighting technique is different, and it's to
yeah.
their advantage. Also, I don't know, just that one scene in particular to where I had that claustrophobic experience of them underneath the machine. I just was blown away by. It was awesome.
This movie is such a great reminder of what sci-fi can be. We have not had a real insane sci-fi franchise other than Star Wars, I guess, really going around right
Hmm.
now. Like, have we and Star Wars has had very up and downs over the last few years. It reminds us that people want to see incredible sci-fi. We want to go to crazy planets and meet people doing different things. And I just, I love it so much. I mean, obviously Star Wars, he just stole a bunch of stuff from Dune, uh, but
Was
I,
inspired, Al. It's called being creatively inspired.
that is a big talking point right now, and I actually am more in agreement with you. I think that is really what it was. Obviously, with Spice, but
Yeah.
the way Spice is in Dune is very different than Spice in Star Wars. Did he keep the same name? Yes, but it is inspiration, and I think it's okay. And I think Frank Herbert probably would have loved Star Wars.
Am I
I'm
an
sure he
idiot?
did.
What's spice in Star Wars?
It's just a trade commodity, but spice and Dune is the only way they can space travel. That's
Right.
not how spice is in Star Wars. It's just a trade commodity. It's
Right,
not
right.
what keeps their ships in line. And unless there's a bigger nerd who has some index that I've never heard of or seen, I mean, spice is not something, it's just mentioned. It's like, oh, it's a spice runner. I ran spice. Like, this was one of my jobs. I was a smuggler. I ran spice.
Oh, oh,
It's like,
oh.
okay. Like, it's just a little side thing. Tatooine, obviously, pretty blatant from Arrakis, but
Sure.
um the Sarlacc pit, things like that. But we yeah, I just, this movie is so freaking good. Are you gonna go see it again? That's a trademark of, am I here to stay? Do people want to go more than once? Because we're going next weekend.
Here's my thing. Yes, but I traveled to another town in a snowstorm to see it in IMAX, and unfortunately, I can't really do that a
Again.
lot. And our theater is complete crap and doesn't have an IMAX, the one in my town, so probably not. Like, my experience on an IMAX for this movie was so great that I don't want to go to a dumpier place.
See, that's exactly what we're doing. We're not going to go to the IMAX again. There's a local or closer theater in a small town really close to us
Mm,
that is like a dine-in specialty theater that we've wanted to try, that we just have been waiting for a movie. And we both were like, let's do a date night. Let's go see Dune again. Let's
yeah.
get dinner and really enjoy it, make more of an event out of it. And then I think over
Mhm.
my spring break at the end of the month, I'm going to try to get tickets and go see it again in the IMAX. Just
Yeah.
in the middle of the afternoon when everybody else is working, just go enjoy myself on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Because I want to see it again so bad. I couldn't stop thinking about it when I got out of the car. Like, I would talk about other things. I was playing games with friends yesterday, and I was talking about other stuff, and it was like, I just want to be talking about Dune. What are we doing
Mhm.
here?
We
Dune's
all
right
saw
there.
this movie.
It's
We all
right
saw
there.
this movie. It's great. Why would you not want to
And
talk
now
about
I'm
it
thinking
more?
of rereading the book again because I want to, and I've been reading books more, listening to audiobooks in the car because I got all this extra driving time. And
Mm.
but I just started the Hunger Games. I got to finish it. Come on.
Or you can do
She
Dune
just
again.
she just punched PETA. Gotta
He probably had it
gotta
coming.
finish that. I don't know what he did. I don't know what's coming. We talked about maybe, because we carpool some days. We talked about maybe
Mhm.
listening to it together while we're driving. But
Oh, that's nice.
yeah, we'll see. But yeah, this movie is incredible. I mean, the shots. Do you have a favorite moment? And I'm gonna nix the silence, him yelling silence, and his big speech. You can't do those two because that's what everybody's talking about, rightfully so. Give me one of your favorite moments in the movie, something that sticks out that wasn't one of those two, that you just were like, man, I loved that
Mhm.
scene.
For a scene, I loved Austin's intro. I loved that gladiator battle scene with the infrared camera shots, I believe they were. But they still wound up like having like a great texture to like the characters and the environment and the people, even though it's like a black and white shot. And just
Yeah.
introducing him as like this vicious warrior, and just he's just has so many loose screws in his head, but just such an entertaining fight. And at the beginning of the movie, like one moment, it's not really anything important, but just the way that you first see like the bad guys like floating from their ship down, trying to find Paul and the others. Like for some reason, the way they just were floating up and down was just so aesthetically pleasing to me. Like, I don't know, just seeing them feel
Yeah.
like weightless as they're floating. I'm like, oh, that feels nice. And then they
It
get
looked
their
fun.
heads blown off. But yeah,
I
exactly. Just
know.
something about it was like, oh, that's pleasant to look at.
I really, every one of Austin Butler's scene. I believe the reason that it's in black and white is because that planet has a black sun, and so in the book, that's, if
Right.
I remember correctly, that's why they would look that way. But man,
Sure.
it's menacing. I love every scene with Austin Butler. I mean, the first scene, you see how psychotic he is, right? He's just talking about the
Mhm.
sharpness of his knife. He's killing people around him. Then you get into that gladiator scene and you see not only is he just psychotic, he's ruthless.
Mhm.
Then I love the scene with our Bond girl, where she
Oh,
kind of manipulates
Leia?
him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then later she's like, yeah, like all men, he's sexually manipulated. And I love
Mhm.
that scene because I think that it showed Austin's range in the performance of how even this crazy psychotic figure can be brought down in specific ways. And I just
Yeah.
thought that was excellent, very well done. Um, a scene that sticks out to me too is the scenes early where Zendaya and that one character, I can't remember the name or the actress, but when they're first kind of talking and they're kind of making fun of not only Paul and the whole prayer and everything, and then Paul is like, "What's so funny?" and he's like talking to them. I really loved that
Right,
scene.
right.
That was one of the ones that popped into my head right away when I asked you the question too, was just because that sums up so much of where they are at and knowing where they were going, because he's going to win them all over. So I really
Mhm.
loved that scene. And anytime Javier Bardem was like, that's what the Messiah would say, and he's like
Yeah.
falling head over heels, it was so funny. Oh, it was great. And his scene with the water with Rebecca Ferguson, I thought was
Yeah.
excellent. Oh my
Yeah.
God, this is a movie you want to watch the characters talk,
I
and it's
wish I
just
remembered I wish I remembered the line exactly, with him saying, don't, I don't know, like, "Don't cry because it's useless for the dead," or something like that, and, like, he has to preserve, like, the tear because they
yeah,
need water.
yeah.
I'm messing up the line, obviously, but yeah,
So good.
Alex, I interrupted you. You nailed it on what you said,
No,
though. Even
you're
when
good.
people talk, you wanna listen.
You
Which,
just
by the
want to listen
way,
to them.
I did hear before going into this movie that, like, people's complaints with the first one were that it's long and boring, and I assume they mean, like, there's a lot of talking and not a lot of doing. I feel like Dune 2 is better at giving you the best of both, I suppose, if you're the type of person that wants a little more than just talking within your movie, I suppose, but I don't know, I feel like people miss out if they don't pay attention, and enjoy, like, how characters, interact, and what feels more authentic compared to, like, overdoing it in being over expository when it comes to, like, here's how these things work, here's, why we're mad at this person. Like, you're able to
Yeah,
get the general sense, but, like, it matters when you listen to the characters because they're explaining to each other how they feel about, like,
yeah,
whether it's about each other, themselves, the situation, because that's the interesting stuff. That's where dialogue comes in handy compared to just being like, here's why we're running away from the aliens. Here's the backstory, blah, blah, blah. And it's just a
I
well written
think
script.
too. I think too. It's Dune 1. Paul whines for the first hour. He wants to go fight. He wants to
Right.
go to Arrakis. He wants to be there with them. He wants to be a
Mm-hmm.
fighter. He's whining. He's not getting what he wants, and he's slowly learning who he needs to become
Mm-hmm.
before tragedy strikes. And so I think it's people probably are like, it's boring because they're getting tired of watching Timothy be who he is in most of his movies beforehand. Just bringing that back,
Right.
but by the end, it's also the second half of the book is all action. The second half of that story is all action.
Mm.
It's training and fighting and coming into your own, and it's relatable. So I think people just really related to it. But yeah, Dune is
Mm.
amazing. Go see it in the biggest theater you can. You got anything else, or should we wrap up here?
Now we can wrap it up. This is our glowing recommendation of Dune 2. I'm happy by how
Mm-hmm.
great it was, and and I hope it is successful, and I hope people really like it.
It's looking like it will be already. Guys, what did you
Okay.
think? Have you seen Dune? I mean, you shouldn't have watched this if you haven't. Comment below, let us know. I'm going to like, subscribe, and share, and get a hoodie. Thank you, Mumio patrons, all that good stuff. And as always, thanks for watching, Mom.
See you guys.